Hello, namaste. Thank you for joining in this third edition of the series on Lajjitadi Avastha, and let's begin. Okay, we actually had covered the role of the Saptagrahas in the last class, or in the last episode of the series, and today we will be looking at the sixth Lajjitadi Avastha. Okay, so Lajjita, it means ashamed, and Adi means etc. Okay, so there are six avasthas, there are six conditions due to which a planet becomes ashamed of its placement in the horoscope. Okay, so all these six avasthas together are known as the Lajjitadi Avasthas. Okay, so before we actually get into these six avasthas, we first have to know or understand rather as to what a Lajjitadi Avastha is. Okay, a Lajjita Avastha is. Okay, and for that we refer to Parashara, the BPHS, which is the big daddy of all jyotish texts. So Parashara mentions about Lajjitadi Avastha in the chapter of Graha Avasthas. Okay, and this comes from the 12th verse of the chapter on Graha Avasthas. Okay, and what does Parashara say? He says that if a planet is in the 5th house or joining Rahu or Ketu and is conjunct the Sun, Saturn, or Mars, such a planet is spoken of as Lajjita. Okay, I'm just repeating Parashara's statement, right? A planet in the 5th house or joining Rahu or Ketu and conjunct the Sun, Saturn, or Mars, such a planet is spoken of as Lajjita. Okay, now this is a very vague statement that has been made by Parashara. Okay, and from this statement we can derive 6 conditions which actually fulfill this statement that is made by Parashara. Okay, so how to let's break it down. Okay, so as a starting point, you must know that Lajjita Avastha is in effect when a planet, any planet, joins Sun, Saturn, or Mars in the 5th house, or if any planet joins Rahu or Ketu. Okay, so 2 conditions we are deriving from what Parashara said about Lajjita Avastha. If a planet joins Sun or Saturn or Mars in the 5th house, or if a planet joins Rahu or Ketu, it is in Lajjita Avastha. Okay, now Lajjita Avastha is the least common avastha. Okay, there is another avastha mentioned in the BPHS which is known as the Shayanadi Avastha. Okay, so Lajjita Avastha is the least common avastha as its requirements are a bit more difficult to fulfill than other avasthas mentioned in the BPHS. Okay, and the effects of Lajjitadi Avastha are not cumulative with that of any other negative avastha, and Lajjitadi Avastha does form with some other does associate with some other negative avasthas. Okay, so what I mean by that is Lajjitadi Avasthas are very they are very hard to decipher. Okay, decipher, if I just forgive me for this. Yeah, so Lajjitadi Avastha is very hard to decipher because the effects are not cumulative. Okay, so you don't know whether whether some other avastha is causing the negative effects in your horoscope or it is the Lajjitadi Avastha. Okay, so but then the question comes, why am I dealing with Lajjitadi Avastha? Because Lajjitadi Avasthas can be corrected. Okay, if a planet is in Lajjitadi Avastha, you can actually correct, because Lajjitadi Avasthas, they actually end up influencing the habits of the planets. Okay, so we have discussed about planetary habits in the last class of all the 7 planets except Rahu and Ketu. So the habits of the planets can be easily changed by by some amount of consciousness. If you are conscious that okay, this is the habit because of which I am suffering, then you can actually improve or change the Lajjitadi Avastha. Okay, now what are the steps to measure a Lajjita planet? Okay, so we had spoken about Shadbala, right? We had spoken about Shadbala of all the Saptagrahas, and we had also discussed the minimum value of Shadbala that must be there for a planet to fulfill its responsibilities. Okay, what were the minimum values? For Sun, it is 390. For Moon, it is 360. For Mars, it is 300. For Mercury, it is 420. For Jupiter, it is 390 again, just like the sun. For Venus, it is 330. For Saturn, it is 300. Okay, so you have to remember these Shadbala values, so that you can utilize these values when we study the influences of the Lajjitadi Avastha. Okay, now what are the steps to measure a Lajjita planet? Okay, so you have to first find out the value of the planet that is causing the Lajjitadi Avastha. Okay, so whichever planet is causing the Lajjit Avastha, we called it as the shaming planet. Okay, and whichever planet is suffering because of the Lajjit Avastha, we call that as the shamed planet. Okay, the shaming planet is one which is causing the Avastha, and the shamed planet is one which is making the planet suffer, which planet is suffering because of it. Okay, so we first find out the Shadbala value of the of the shaming planet, okay, which is causing this Avastha to manifest. So according to Parashara's definition, the shaming planet can be Sun or Saturn or Mars or all the three together. Okay, so you have to first find out the Shadbala of either Sun or Mars or Saturn. So this Shadbala value, it will indicate the degree of shame that is felt. Okay, now find out the shamed planet. Okay, for example, say Jupiter is joining Saturn. So in that case, the Jupiter will be the shamed, and then this Jupiter and Saturn is in the 5th house. So in that case, Jupiter will be the shamed planet. So the value of the shaming planet has to be subtracted from the value of the shamed planet. Okay. So now, so say Jupiter, you subtract the value of the shaming planet. For example, say again, taking this example, say Jupiter has joined Saturn. So Saturn is the shaming planet, and you are subtracting the the Shadbala of Saturn from the Shadbala of Jupiter, which in case is the shamed planet. Okay. Now, after this subtraction, if the Shadbala of Jupiter is less than the minimum Shadbala value which we discussed in the last class. Okay, so if the Shadbala value of Jupiter is less than this, so you take that shame value. Okay, you take that shamed value. Suppose Saturn is joining Jupiter. Suppose Saturn has a value of Shadbala of say 400. Jupiter has a Shadbala value of say let's say how much? Say 450. Okay, let's say 450. And then if you subtract 450 from 400, you're left with 50. Okay, now subtract this 50 from Jupiter's original Shadbala value. So what is Jupiter's original Shadbala value? It is 450. Subtract 50 from it, so you're left with 400. Okay, so it is still greater than the minimum value of Shadbala that is required for Jupiter. So again, I've listed out the minimum values. For Sun, it is 390. For Jupiter, it is 390. For Moon, it is 360. For Mars, it is 300. For Mercury, it is 420. For Jupiter, again, it's 390. For Venus, it is 330. And for Saturn, it is 300. Okay, so if this subtracted value, okay, if this subtracted value is less than the minimum required of the planet, then the planet will have a very tangible amount of shame. Okay, the planet will be feeling a very tangible amount of shame. This means in this case Jupiter will be feeling a very tangible amount of shame, and the trauma will be it will create a lasting impact on the native. Okay, and then if the Shadbala value of the planet after its reduction is reduced to 0 or less, then the shame will be devastating. Okay, then the shame will be devastating. That means the individual will be devastated by the shame that is being caused by the shamed planet. Okay, now where will the shame come from? The shame will come from the houses which is ruled by the rashis of those planets. Okay, so suppose Jupiter is the shamed planet, and this planet has been devastated by this Lajjitadi Avastha. So in that case, the shame will come from those houses where where Sagittarius and Pisces are located. Okay, now this shame will be more difficult to bear if the sun is involved. Okay, so if if the sun is involved, so if sun is starving Saturn, then for example, if sun is starving Saturn, in that case, it can make the shame very difficult to bear. Okay, it may cause a lot of empty pride, which may result in a lot of empty pride, which may cause the individual to convince themselves that nothing is their fault. Okay, why does this shame become so difficult to bear if it involves the sun? Because the sun is the karaka for fame. Okay, the sun is always famous, right? So many people think that Rahu is the karaka for fame, but it is not the sun. It is not Rahu. It is actually the sun. Okay, so if sun is afflicted, your fame is gone, right? Your fame is gone. Basically, it's not going to turn into notoriety. It is gone. All right. So it is very important to understand that the foundation for this shame may be that of Rahu or Ketu. Okay, depending on who is taking part in the shaming. Okay, so if Rahu is involved in the shaming, we have not discussed about Rahu and Ketu till now. All right. So if Rahu is involved in the shaming, then the foundation is a dullness. Okay, a lack of response to stimuli. And then the remedy is that the individual will require extreme stimuli in order to fully experience anything. And the need for extremes very often gives more cause for shame, as as extremes can only result in negative things to manifest. Okay, if Ketu is taking part in the shaming, then the foundation for the shame is oversensitivity. Okay, and the individual or the native will have such a great sensitivity that it can become a big weakness. Okay, and such a weakness often prevents the individual from living a normal life, again, which results in a feeling of shame. So it's a very cyclical thing to happen. Okay, this shame is a very cyclical thing to happen. Okay, if the shame is caused by Rahu, the individual refuses to to respond to anything. Okay, refuses to have new experiences. So for that, he or she will have a need for extremes, and this will cause more shame, because extreme anything in the extreme of anything is always bad. It's always painful. Similarly, if Ketu is involved in this shaming, oversensitivity can prevent the individual from leading a normal life. Okay, so do you have any doubts still here? If not, we can continue to the avasthas. Okay. So the first avastha that we will study is is known as the Garvit Avastha. Garvit means proud. Okay, Garvit means proud. All right. So what does Parashara define this as? Okay, so in the 13th verse of the chapter Graha Avasthas, Parashara says that if a planet which is ashamed by Sun or Saturn or Mars or Rahu or Ketu is in the 5th house, but is in exaltation place or in a trikona, it causes Garvita. Okay, so Garvita is also known as Nirvishamka. Okay, Nirvishamka, or it is also known as Dvijottama. Okay, so Garvita Avastha is in effect when a planet is in exaltation or in a Mool Trikon Rashi. Okay, so this planet in Garvita Avastha, it feels a healthy sense of pride and confidence in respect to its accomplishments and high productivity. Okay, Garvita Avastha is also known as Nirvishkam. Nirvishkam means fearless or overconfident. Okay, so why Nirvishkam? Because it has the ability to withstand the unfavorable influences of other planets. Okay, so if a planet is in exaltation or Mula Trikona, okay, and it is joining Saturn or Rahu, or Saturn or Sun or Mars or Rahu or Ketu, so it it prides at its ability to withstand unfavorable influences of other planets. Okay, so the good thing is, if there are other unfavorable avastha effects coming, okay, so that planet which is in Garvita Avastha, it can prevent, it can prevent the other unfavorable effects, coming up. Okay. And the other unfavorable effects means, Lajjit Avastha. There is a Avastha which is called starved Avastha. Okay. Which is known as Shudit. Okay. Then there is another Avastha which is the Trishita Avastha. Trishita means thirsty. Okay. Or Shobhit Avastha. All right. Shobhit means agitated. Okay. Shobhit means agitated. So if a planet, if a planet is in Garvita Avastha, it can actually overcome these other avasthas. Okay. It can overcome these other avasthas, which actually gives it more reason to be proud. Okay. And, the other point being, if a planet is in Garvita, okay, if a planet is in Garvita, it can weather up to its own Shadbala value before beginning to succumb to the ill influences of any other unfavorable avasthas. Okay, so a few points to remember for this Garvita Avastha or this proud Avastha. So if a planet is in Garvita, okay, Garvita is actually a part of the Lajjita Avastha. So if a planet is, is in Garvita Avastha, it can actually help a planet rather than, weakening it. Okay. If another planet is in other unfavorable avasthas, for example, Shudita Avastha or Trishita Avastha or Shobhita Avastha, then this Garvita Avastha can help that planet. Okay. And which is the planet which indicates pride? It is Venus. Okay. People think that it is Sun that is the Karaka for pride. No, Sun is the Karaka for ego. But it is Venus that, that is the Karaka for pride. Okay. So, the better the Avastha of Venus, okay, the more powerfully the native will feel the effects of Venus. Okay. Because Venus is the, is the Karaka for pride. Okay. And similarly, Garvita will also be more powerfully felt if Venus is causing Mudita Avastha to Saturn. Mudita means pleasurable. Okay, we'll come to what Mudita is. So this is about Garvita Avastha. Okay, we'll just go through the avasthas first, and then we will take up, the things in details, because, if you don't go through the avasthas, it will not make sense. Okay, so while describing Garvita Avastha, I use reference to the other avasthas. Okay, for example, the Shudita Avastha or the Trishita Avastha or the Mudita Avastha. So we'll look at those in details now. Okay. So next, we come to the Shudita Avastha, which is known as the starved Avastha. Okay. So if the planet is in enemy Rashi, joined by an enemy, or is aspected by an enemy, in that case, the planet is in Shudita Avastha. Shudita means starved. Okay. And even if the planet is not in an enemy Rashi, or not in a, or not joined by any enemy, or not aspected by any enemy, Shudita Avastha is still caused if Saturn is joining the Lajjita planet. Okay. So there are 4 distinct possibilities. Yes. The first possibility is, the planet in Lajjita Avastha is in the Rashi of an enemy. The second condition is such a planet joins an enemy planet. The third condition is such a planet is aspected by an enemy. And the fourth condition is when Saturn is joining such a planet. Okay. So a planet that is in Shudita Avastha, it loses the Shadbala influence of the enemy planet that causes the Shudita. Okay. Again, if a planet is in Shudita Avastha, it loses the Shadbala influence of the enemy planet that causes the Shudita. Okay. And if this influence comes from being in an enemy Rashi, okay, then the value lost is that of the Shadbala, the Lord of the Rashi. Okay. If this influence, if the Shudita Avastha comes by the conjunction of a planet, then the value lost is that of the Shadbala of the joining planet. Okay. And if the influence, excuse me, if the influence comes from an aspect by an enemy planet, In that case, the value lost is that of the Shadbala multiplied by the aspectal value divided by 60. Okay, you have to find out the aspectal value. Okay, the software will do it for you, divided by 60, and that will give you the value lost. Okay, now you don't have to worry about this. You just take a paid software and see which avastha each planet is. Okay, Kala gives you a very good information about it. Sri Jyotish Star will also give you a very good information about the Lajjitadi Avastha. Okay. Now, what are the effects of this Shuddhita Avastha? So, if the Shadbala of the starved planet is reduced to less than its minimum required Shadbala by any single enemy planet, then at some point there will be some significant disappointment with the starved planet. Okay. So, the planet that is getting into this Shuddhita Avastha will cause significant disappointment to the life of a native. Okay. Again, if the Shadbala of the starved planet is reduced to 0 or less by any single enemy planet, then at some point there would be a devastating disappointment with respect to the starved planet. Okay. So in the first case, we spoke about disappointment. In the second case, the disappointment will be very devastating. Okay. So a planet in Garvita Avastha can withstand being starved to a much greater degree than other planets due to the benefit of additional Shadbala. And so it can prevent starvation. Okay. So if a planet has gone into Lajjita Avastha, you want that planet to be in Garvita Avastha. Okay. Because if it is in Garvita Avastha, it can withstand the impact of the other malefic avasthas. Okay. Now, Shuddhita Avastha of any planet will be extremely painful with traumatic residue when Saturn is starved by the Sun or Moon or Mars. Okay. Or when Saturn is weak in Shadbala. So what happens? Whenever there is a Shuddhita Avastha, okay, involving Saturn, in that case, the pain will result in mental, emotional, energetic, or physical trauma. Okay, so we have discussed about each of these traumas in the first class. Okay, what is mental trauma? What is emotional trauma? What is physical trauma? All right, and because the moon has no enemies, okay, moon will only be in Shuddhita Avastha when it is joining Saturn. Okay, if the moon joins Saturn, because of the fact that the moon does not have any enemies, it will be in Shuddhita Avastha. Okay. Next, we come to the Trishita Avastha. Okay. So Trishita Avastha, what does the BPHS say? Again, this comes from Graha Sutras, verse number 15. If a planet is in a water rashi, what are the water rashis? Jala rashi, what are the Jala rashis? Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. So if a planet is in water rashi and aspected by an enemy planet with no auspicious planet aspecting it, it is said to be in Trishita Avastha. Trishita means thirsty. Okay, so thirst is always associated with water. So, Trishita Avastha is a Lajjitadi Avastha whenever a planet is in a water rashi and that planet again is aspected by an enemy. Okay. Additionally, if such a planet in Trishita Avastha is aspected by a Saumya planet, what are the Saumya planets? Mercury, Jupiter, and Venus. Okay, these are the Saumya planets. So if such a planet is aspected by a Saumya planet, in that case, the Trishita Avastha is reduced to some extent. Okay. Now, an inimical planet joining a planet in water rashi will only cause Shuddhita. Okay. And it is only the aspecting planet or only the aspecting enemy that we call Trishita. Okay. So Trishita, as I said, it means thirsty. So this Avastha, Trishita Avastha, it indicates lack of emotional fulfillment that a planet experiences. Okay. So most people, consider Shuddhita and the Trishita Avastha as the same, but it is not. Okay. When Trishita is there, Shuddhita will always be present. Okay. This is a disclaimer. But, you have to read as an astrologer, you have to read and analyze both of these avasthas separately. Okay. So how to do it? You first analyze the Shuddhita influences, and this will indicate the level of disappointing hardship that the planet experiences. Okay. Then you determine the Trishita Avastha by subtracting the Shadbala of the aspecting planet multiplied by the aspectal value divided by 60. Okay. From the Shadbala of the planet, including any strength gained from being in Garvita. Okay. And now to this, you will add, you'll add the Shadbala times aspect value divided by 60 of any Shubha planets aspecting who are not enemies. Okay. So this result will give you the Trishita value or Trishita Avastha of the planet. Okay. So the calculations are complex, as I said. You have to use a software if you want to get this thing quickly. Okay. So what are the effects of this Avastha? So if the Trishita Avastha takes the planet below its minimum required Shadbala, then the planet will feel that the effort to have success in this hard and competitive world is not really worth the fulfillment that is obtained. Okay. And if this Trishita Avastha takes the planet's Shadbala to 0 or less, then the planet's experiences, confirm to the individual that the fight is not at all worth the fulfillment given, and all desires and hopes are abandoned. So this is a greater difficult situation to encounter, to handle. Okay. Again, a planet, if it is in Garvita Avastha, it can withstand being thirsted to a much greater degree. Why? Because the Garvita Avastha planet has an additional Shadbala. Okay. And so this additional Shadbala can also prevent Trishita or can prevent thirst. All right. Now the moon will never be in Trishita Avastha. Why? Because the moon has no enemies. Okay. And the Trishita Avastha of any planet will be all the more painful if the moon is starved or agitated, or if the moon starves Saturn. Okay. So we'll come to what this starving means and what this agitating means. All right. So Trishita Avasthas reveal that a planet in a watery Rashi, though starved by an aspecting enemy, will be easily pleased through its capacity with just some gentle treatment, and will not suffer as much as a Shobhita planet, because they simply do not need as much. Simply, some kindness is sufficient. Okay. So these are the 3 Lajjitadi Avasthas. We will go to Mudita Avastha, then the Shobhita Avastha in the next class, and thereafter we will look at the effects of the Lajjitadi Avasthas. Okay. So I don't want this class to be much longer, because this is heavy stuff that is coming up. Okay. So I just want you to consume it for a week. Watch this video 2 to 3 times before you actually start making sense. So any ideology behind Saturn requiring the least of numbers, that is 300. No, I don't know if there is any ideology. Okay, this is what Parashara says in the BPHS, and he has not given any logic for it. Maybe it's because Saturn belongs to the servant class. You look at all the other planets, they are all Deva Grahas, Surya, Chandra, then Mercury, Venus, again Jupiter. These are all Deva Grahas. Only Saturn is the servant. So maybe it's because that Saturn is servant. Other than that, if there is any other reason, I don't know. Okay. So anyways, hopefully this class will be a learning experience for all those who are watching the recordings too. And I'll see you on Saturday for the Kala Sarpa class. All right then. Thank you so much for joining in. Om Guru Namaha.